Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and if you're looking to add a brake controller to your 2025 Nissan Frontier, my personal favorite is going to come from REDARC, and that's what we're installing today. This is the REDARC Tow-Pro Liberty, which is a little bit different than your traditional brake controller. You may notice there's nothing here to knock my knees on, just a nice OEM-style knob that's going to give you all the functionality of a traditional brake controller. Newer trucks are quite a bit different than the trucks of yesteryear. A lot of creature comforts come into play, and so when you're going to tow a trailer that has brakes, getting a brake controller is going to be a necessity. And instead of getting a knee knocker or something that you're going to hit every time you get in, why not get something that's going to work well with your factory interior, not going to be in the way, and look really clean in the process? And that's really the glory of the REDARC brake controllers. This small knob is going to give you everything you need, including your manual override. You could get two different functions. You can have a user-controlled feature or just auto braking. It's all going to be proportional. And you'll be able to turn the gain super easy and see that because it's backlit, but also as you intensify that gain, it's going to change color, letting you know that that braking will be more intense. Now, if your truck is factory tow package prepped, meaning you already have a 7-way, this is a super easy installation because you can get this with a factory style harness that's going to plug in behind the dash and you don't have to splice any wires. You can also get a knockout panel that's going to pop in directly and be pre-drilled, so super easy. I ended up modifying ours today, and you can absolutely do the same thing to get this nice clean look. Now, as far as what the brake controller can do as opposed to other ones, the only limitation with this that I see from other brake controllers is there's not going to be any save functions as far as different trailers, but a turn of a knob fixes that. And something to keep in mind, this is only for trailers with 1 to 2 axles, which probably is going to be something that you're going to be towing with the Frontier. I highly doubt you're going to be towing anything with 3 or more axles. So a great fit for this truck overall. Now, this was super easy because our truck was factory tow package prepped. If yours isn't, well, you can still get this brake controller, but you may need to pick up a few extra things, including an ETBC7 kit. And if you don't have 4-pole wiring, you're also going to need that. The ETBC7 is going to run from a 7-pole that's included and run duplex to the battery. Battery power will run inside. It's a little bit more extensive of an install, but we do have those videos online here at eTrailer. Other ways would be to get a 7-pole and a Curt Echo brake controller, which you can use from your phone. But if you're factory tow package prep, this is absolutely the one that I'd pick. Now, with that being said, I hope that you're tackling this installation on your own. It's fairly straightforward, but I also understand if you don't want to tackle it yourself. And if that's the case, you can find someone to do this for you by using our dealer locator. You'll simply put in your zip code and find a list of shops near you that can get this installed, and then you can be out on the road towing your trailer and being able to use your brake controller. Along with that, during the installation, if there's anything that I could have been a little bit more clear on, or things that were helpful, or any tips or tricks that you might have come up with along the way, or if you're out there towing your trailer, send us some pictures and any input you may have that really helps us understand what neighbors are doing with their Frontiers, and also how to make our videos better for neighbors like you so you can install parts at home. Speaking of that installation, let's take a look at that now. To get our REDARC installed on a Frontier, it's actually going to be a pretty easy installation. It's going to require just a small amount of fabrication because we're going to mount this in one of the knockout panels. So if you have one open, we're going to be modifying this to make it work in there so you're going to get a nice clean look. And I would recommend sitting in the truck and determine which spot you want. You could put it lower. I would recommend, me personally, as I sat in here, that adjusting it right here would make a lot of sense to me. And with that being said, knocking this out and trimming it is going to take a little bit of fabrication. So if you're not afraid of that, you can absolutely use this. But REDARC also has a knockout panel with the hole already drilled out that's going to fit in this. So that's another option, just to make it a little bit easier for you. Now, another thing that I'll recommend is using our fit guide is going to allow you to get this plug and play harness. This is factory prep, so there's a 7-way on the truck. And that makes it so we can just simply plug this into a port that's already there, get everything mounted up, and then that's pretty much it. So it's a pretty easy installation if you have this and if you're willing to fabricate this. But let's get this started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is get our plastic underbody or foot panel here taken down. And there's going to be one Phillips head screw. It's going to be located by the hood latch release. So we'll get that taken out first. Now put your screw in a nice organized spot. We're going to have a few more that we're going to take out, so hold on to your Phillips head screwdriver because we'll need that shortly. Now we'll just pop this out, and as it kind of implies, these are just snapped in. So if you pull, just kind of reach your fingers behind the steering wheel column and pull this back, and then on the other side we'll do the same thing. And once you get this popped, the weather stripping here kind of holds it in, but we're pretty much able to just get this nice and loose, and this is going to give us access to a lot of different things, including our knockout panel as well as our plug, which is going to be located right here. Now, to get this knockout panel out nice and clean, we're going to want to remove this section. There's going to be 4 knockout panels, so it looks like we have our audible alerts as well as our AC power here. So what we'll do to make it a little easier, these 2 up top for the tow mode, as well as our, it looks like our illumination panel or our trip reset, we're going to unplug those. It's not completely necessary to unplug these, but it is going to make it a little bit easier for us to get access to it. So there's a small tab that you'll pinch and then pull out. So it's just right there. And the same goes for this one. And then to get this whole section out, there's going to be 3 Phillips head screws. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So we'll get those taken out, and then this should drop out, making it easy to get that knockout panel. So now with it like this, it's going to be easy to pop out. I'm going to go with this one, and you're going to probably want a small flathead screwdriver because we have tabs here that lock this into place. And I found that it's easiest to slide that flathead in between here, and that's going to start loosening it up, and then we can push out the rest of it. So with my small flathead, I'm just going to wedge this underneath the tab. And there's a tab on the top and bottom, so what I like to do is get this pulled out slightly, and then you can work at the top one, but you want to try to make sure it doesn't snap back in. And then also having your finger behind here if you want to push while you pry those tabs, that's also a good way to do it. So with this taken out, I mentioned that we're going to fabricate a little bit, and it's really nothing crazy. This is going to be what our brake controller looks like. And it's going to slot in here, but you can see it's got this grid of plastic here, and as I kind of use the backside to gauge it, it's going to be a little bit tight here. It is probably going to fit, but I may end up cutting just behind these tabs. We want to still make sure that it can lock in place, so I'll notch this out, and then probably what I'll do is just use a pair of snips to cut down as much as possible and then kind of break that plastic out. And once we can kind of slot this in, then we can worry about drilling out the holes for the knob as well as the LED indicator. So here's kind of finished product. It is not pretty, don't get me wrong, but once it's all snapped in, as long as it's functional, that's all that matters. Now, if you're wondering how I got that cut out, what I ended up using was a pair of snips. These are for zip ties, and I just went down and cut on each of those 4 sides, and then just took a pair of needle nose and twisted until it kind of broke off. From there, I took a burr bit and just kind of worked my way throughout here, making it as flush as possible. You're really trying to make sure that nothing's going to hinder it from being able to poke all the way through. Sometimes that can cause you to not be able to use the bezel, which not the end of the world, but if you can get that nice and flat, and then I also just cut this short. So now what we need to do is drill the holes for the knob as well as the light, and there is going to be a measurement that you can find in the instruction manual. What I like to do is grab the bezel, and I'll point out that the top of this is going to have the 2 slots, whereas the bottom only has the single. So let's make sure we get this in the proper orientation, and then we're going to want this nub or that hole at the 12 o'clock position. And what I'm going to do is take a punch just so I can visually see it, but if you have a pen or something along those lines, that'll work. And our top, I'm going to make that just a little dimple there so I know to drill. And same thing with this, I'll center this up because we're going to be using a 3/8 drill bit and an 1/8 inch. So I've got that right here, so we can go ahead and get that drilled out now. So we'll start with our 3/8 drill bit. And this may want to spin on you, so take your time here. You don't want to get too crazy and have it spin. And I got a little off center here. It's not the end of the world, but what we want to do is this little inset on the bezel, that should snap in and make this as flush as possible. And then from here, I might waller that out just a little bit because once we tighten it down, the barrel nut's going to fit in that bezel. So really, it's not super important if it's a little off. We want this centered up long term though. Now, you may have flashing from that drilling, and I would recommend getting those burrs taken out. It may hinder that from sitting as flush as possible when we go to tighten it down. So now we can grab the brake controller, and this should slide in. That light's going to go into that hole, and what we're going to want to do is grab our barrel nut and our bezel here that we have, and we're going to put that in place, and then our barrel nut should thread onto our brake controller. Now, make sure that it's nice and square. It's fairly easy. I'm not going to say to cross thread, but if it's not spinning on nice and easy, then try again because you don't want to, make those threads damaged. So tighten by hand, and then once you get it started, you can grab a 12mm socket and just by hand snug it down. Finished product should look something like this, and at this point what we're going to want to do is take the knob and dial it all the way counterclockwise until it stops. We can then take our knob and find the 0. That's going to be at that top 12 o'clock position, and you should be able to get an audible click. Now if you're not getting that audible click, what you can do is simply remove that bezel, and then you can tighten that barrel nut down, and that's going to draw the brake controller a little bit farther forward. This is fairly thick plastic, so I could see how that might be an issue, but I was able to get this to work, so with a little bit of patience, I think you can as well. So again, just double check for that nice audible click. Now we should be able to slot this into place and snap it in. Now I noticed there is some plastic flashing on the back here that might cause just a small issue here. So if we need to, we could notch a little bit out. So I think I can get this to pop in though. It seems like it's flush and it's popped in place. So looking pretty good here. At this point, what we're going to want to do is grab our Ethernet style plug and plug this into the back side. Now there's a 90-degree one and then there's a straight one. You can really use whatever. I'm going to probably go with the straight one here. Now with that snapped in, we can get our 3 screws put back in place and double check real quick to make sure that you're happy with it, but this is how ours looks, and overall I'm really content. It looks factory and that's what we're looking for. The next thing we're going to do is grab our OEM style plug to plug into the factory tow package, which if you reach back right here, there's a taped up plug and it looks like this. So this should snap directly in. And then if you follow the end of this, this will match up to one end of our brake controller, or the module at least. So we'll get this plugged in, and then the other side, of that Ethernet style plug is going to go into the brake controller. So essentially that's it. But we do need to get this mounted up, and it can really go any direction here. But what we need to do is make sure that it's going to be nice and solid. So whether we use zip ties or you self-tap it into something underneath the dash, don't put it on anything that can move, because this uses, well, it's going to do a calibration mode, and it's going to learn where it's at. But if you're on something that's going to be moving around, that can adjust, or it's going to maybe be a detriment to how it's going to be braking. So make sure it's nice and solid. So I'll get mine mounted up, show you how it looks, and then from here, we'll test it and make sure everything's working properly. Now, I was able to get this mounted up. There's a small bracket that's right here with a small lip behind it, and it just sat back there pretty easily. There's a few holes, so I zip tied through the bottom one here, and then the other bottom hole here, and then at the top, I just ran it through top loops and zip tied it around this support that we have here, and it's nice and solid. So from there, I plugged everything in, if it wasn't already plugged in, and then just zip tied up all the excess. That way it's not just loose underneath there. So at this point, we'll make sure to get our connections plugged back in here, and we can get our panel snapped back in place, and then put in our screw that we had by our hood latch release. Now, once everything's all snapped back in place, it's a good time to test to make sure it's working. And really all you have to do is push the button. You should see that blue illuminate. Now, I mentioned earlier that this needs to be calibrated, and if you have your trailer available, that's great, because all you really have to do before hooking up to that trailer is go out, hit the brakes a few times, and really it's going to be pretty simple to know because of the color change. So when you plug in your 7-way, it's going to start that calibration process, and what you'll do is basically hit those brakes, and then it's going to change to a solid color. Now, if you don't have your trailer available, not to worry, this is going to self-calibrate as you drive. So if you're not hooking up directly, just drive your vehicle around, and then by the time you're ready to hook up to it, it'll be nice and calibrated and ready to go. Now that I've driven around a little bit, I put our 7-pole tester, which is going to simulate hooking up to a trailer, and we went through our calibration phase. So it took maybe about 10 times of getting up to about 15 miles per hour and hitting the brakes before it was calibrated. And during that process, you'll get a green to blue flash, and then once it goes blue, you're good to go. You won't have to do that process again. It's ready to rock for the next time you tow your trailer. And that was a look at the REDARC Tow-Pro Liberty brake controller on a 2025 Nissan Frontier.